Once upon a time, a professor was teaching a class about time management, and the professor set a 1-gallon glass jar on the table and filled it up with pretty good-sized rocks. He then said to the students, "Is the jar full?" They replied, "Yes, it's full." And then he pulled out a bag of pebbles and he poured them into the jar. As he did, he shook the jar so that the pebbles sifted down through the holes between the rocks. Eventually, the pebbles reached the top of the jar, and once again, he looked at the class and said, "Is the jar full?" The students cautiously answered, "Yes." And then he pulled out a bag of sand and he did the same thing, pouring and shaking until the sand reached the top of the jar. This time, when he looked at the students and said, "Is the jar full?" they said, "No." He smiled. He pulled out a pitcher of water. He poured it into the jar until the water reached the top of the jar. And then he looked at the students and he said, "What was the point of this illustration?" And one young man jumped up and said, "I know. No matter how full your schedule is, if you try hard enough, you can always fit some more things into it." The professor shook his head and replied, "That's not the point I was trying to illustrate. The point I was trying to illustrate is that if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them all in. If you fill your jar first with pebbles or sand or water, then there won't be any room for the rocks. If you allow the small things to take up all of your time, then you won't be able to accomplish the bigger things. Figure out what your highest priorities are and do your best to work first on those things that move you towards your goals. Once your goal-related activities are scheduled, then you can fill the rest of your schedule with all those other activities that are less important but still need to be done." Of course, you know this already. But the illustration of the rocks in the jar is a good reminder to schedule your highest priorities first. I imagine that you do this because that's what winners do. And you are a winner, and given enough time